Hello again. I hope you snuggled up warmly and ready to enjoy the next hour with us. Later tonight, we hear from the executive chairman of the JD Group. It's the first time they've spoken to us in months of working on the story, and this time they asked for the appointment, but that's later. We start tonight's program in the countryside, where a price is being paid in the quest for the perfect export quality fruit. We must warn viewers that some visuals may offend sensitive people. Over to Debbie.
When you get a phone call from your wife to say that your child has died and is dead, and you're 1.5 hours drive away.
Christopher had stopped breathing.
He had seizures, he had tubes everywhere, respirators, tubes into his brain.
Doctors spent 50 minutes trying to bring him back to life. Miraculously, he survived. 1,000 kilometers away in the citrus mecca of Groblersdal in Mpumalanga, medical doctor Johan Minnaar was once again plagued by flu-like symptoms.
I started off with these symptoms of headaches and dizziness, and I was just feeling terrible, the same muscle aches, pains and tiredness.
He thought it was just another flare-up of chronic fatigue syndrome, but the symptoms intensified and within days he was crippled. Worried that it was a brain tumor, his wife rushed him off for a CT scan and blood tests.
And everything came back as normal.
Puzzled, the doctor and his wife Liz pored over the results.
And then she said, you know, it's funny. Why is it that you're always sick a certain time of the year, but there's a definite pattern?
Don't you think that it can be the influence of the pesticides that they use? And at first, I don't think Johan really believed me.
And I was laughing at her. I said, no, it's impossible. I don't think it can make me sick like that.
Although he initially dismissed her suggestion, he soon realized that his bouts of illness coincided with the crop spraying season. Intrigued, he started conducting his own research. He sent his own blood samples to pathologists and had it tested for organophosphates, a nerve gas originally designed to be used in chemical warfare. It's now widely used in pesticides as a nerve poison to kill insects.
But they have quite serious side effects, particularly related to neurotoxicity, effects on the brain and the peripheral nervous system.
University of Cape Town professor Leslie London has studied the link between aerial organophosphate spraying in the Northern Cape and the incidence of neurological disorders.
They also thought to have some other kinds of effects, immune effects. Some of them are allergenic, and some of them are thought to be endocrine disruptors.
There was no doubt in my mind that what I've experienced was standing in front of me.
He had his blood tested weekly and plotted the test results on a graph. It was clear that the exposure was erratic.
This is bad. That means that your enzyme is very low. It means there's high pesticide use.
Chemical pathologist Dr. Melissa Yssel, who specializes in organophosphate poisoning, did the blood analysis.
If we were to look at that graph that he showed us,
Yes.
up and down throughout,
Yes.
is that indicative of somebody who has been exposed to pesticide poisoning?
It's very specific to someone that has actually been exposed on a chronic basis to a possible low dose of organophosphates. It is quite a typical pattern for organophosphate poisoning.
Should people in Groblersdal be concerned?
I think they should. Cancers has been found, stillbirths, birth defects has been found, but none can be linked legally almost to a human exposure.
Armed with a file of reports of patients suffering from a variety of symptoms like partial facial paralysis, miscarriages and cancers, possibly linked to pesticide poisoning, Dr. Minnaar approached the Department of Agriculture for help.
There was an inspector that visited me just after the letter, and they will come back to me with an answer. It took months.
Nothing happened. In desperation, he approached the local media, schools and colleagues, but no one listened.
I was praying to God to please just bring patients to me so that I got the evidence to show people that really there is a problem.
Dr. Minnaar didn't have to wait long. In February, a 5-year-old girl and her mother walked into his rooms.
She came in, was a small little girl sitting there, but she had a jacket on. Then she took it off, and then I see this child with these breasts of a 12, 13, 14-year-old girl, and I was just shocked.
According to a study concluded in Mexico, early breast development in young girls is not uncommon in agricultural areas known for high pesticide usage.
There was a study by a researcher called Elizabeth Juliet, and And she followed up first children for their development and showed that there was a problem in children who were exposed to pesticides compared to other Indian children who were in an area where there was no pesticide usage.
Not only did Juliet find that some of the girls who lived in the valley with high pesticide usage developed breasts prematurely, but had developmental disparities. These pictures show the valley children had difficulty drawing, had impaired hand-eye coordination and short-term memory problems compared to the children living on the foothills without pesticide usage. Back in the Groblersdal Valley, we were shocked to witness an aerial crop sprayer at work less than a kilometre from a local school. We took up the matter with Jennifer Ratebe, the Department of Agriculture's Senior Manager for Food Safety and Quality.
Surely that's not acceptable.
It shouldn't happen because clearly the residential areas are too close to the farms.
But the reality is that it is happening and the results are very disturbing.
Just looking at that picture, I mean, how do you react to that? That's a 5-year-old little girl.
I'm concerned and very concerned. Having said that, I'm actually a little bit concerned that we were not informed even earlier, because I'm sure this didn't happen overnight.
But Dr. Menar had approached the Limpopo Health Department. And it wasn't just the little girl. Teenage boys have started developing breasts during the crop spraying season.
How many boys have you seen with developing breasts?
I did see, I would say, about 4 or 5 during the past few months.
The main reason for this is that the pesticides mimic some of the hormones in the human body.
So what your body will see this pesticide as a stimulator, and your body will react to this pesticide.
Although we seldom think about the endocrine system, it influences almost every cell, organ and function of our bodies. As the body's chemical messengers, the hormones transfer information and instructions from one set of cells to another. What the organophosphates do is operate as endocrine disruptors. They mimic or block hormones and disrupt the body's normal functions. You've seen this before on carte blanche. Boys with undescended testicles and a girl with both sexual organs. And this time around, false breasts in boys.
We have to solve this problem because it's the children that is very sensitive to the pesticides.
In Riebeek Kasteel near Cape Town, Jurgen Schumacher was living his dream of bringing up his children in a healthy rural environment.
We wanted a house in the country. We wanted a large garden with fruit trees and a vegetable patch where we could grow our own veggies and the children could pick fruit.
But this dream of an idyllic lifestyle lay shuttered. The mists that rolled into town were deadly. Jurgen and his wife live next door to Johan Flock, a citrus and table grape farmer who produces mostly for the export market. They were unaware of the possible lethal impact that his crop spraying was having on their 2 young children, until his son was hospitalized. Jurgen was convinced that this was related to the crop spraying.
And the specialists that saw him said that it was definitely, in their opinion, as a result of the poisons that we'd been sprayed with. And in particular, the poisons that my wife had been sprayed with when she was pregnant.
Concerned about their health, Jurgen confronted his neighbor.
We'd asked him to notify us before he sprayed so that we could remove ourselves and the children from our house and our garden and the town during the duration of the spraying. And he just didn't cooperate.
Johan Flock simply ignored his promises and continued spraying with impunity. The final straw for Jurgen came a few months later when his eldest son was playing in their garden.
When suddenly a tractor came past the fence and sprayed him to the point that he was wet with poison. And I mean, it burned him severely. He came inside, his eyes were red, he was screaming, he's in absolute pain.
After several frantic phone calls, they were told that their son had been sprayed with dicazole and sugar, and that it was harmless.
We believed it because we thought sugar. And it's only afterwards that we discovered that dicazole is a red label organophosphate that is highly poisonous, and our son was sprayed with that.
Die middels wat ons toedien is geensins gevaarlike middels vir natuur of vir mens nie.
Johan Flock produces for Tesco's, the biggest European purchaser of South African fruit. He believes he's doing nothing wrong.
Ek is hier om met my gewone boerderypraktyke aan te gaan binne die Suid-Afrikaanse wet, binne die internasionale wet.
Despite claiming that he was following the letter of the law, he did agree to settle with Jurgen when he took him to the Cape High Court. He agreed to all Jürgen's conditions and it was made an order of the court.
Subsequently to that, he seems to have ignored that whole undertaking and the whole High Court issue, and he's continued doing what he wants.
Jürgen felt that he needed visual evidence, so for the past 8 months, he's been filming the farmers' indiscriminate practices.
This poison has the ability to dissolve your corneas of your eyes. Look at those clouds blowing into the residential area.
Spray drift, particularly in windy conditions, is hazardous and it's illegal.
And now this tractor will continue all the way up the hill whilst blowing his poison into the, people's houses.
It's an invisible powder that's basically constantly drifting over the house. It's being pushed under the doors.
David Bellamy owns a bed and breakfast in Riebeek Kasteel, and his property also borders on Flock's farm.
I know when one of the mist blows has gone past because within half an hour I'm getting intense pains in my ankles and my feet, and I know that I'm not going to be able to walk very well tomorrow.
And it's affecting others.
Because a lot of our small children got asthma, and from the bigger people, they got asthma.
According to the World Health Organization, there are 3 million acute cases of pesticide poisoning every year, mostly in developing countries. This mist blower was left on the street for 3 days where children could walk through its deadly residue with their bare feet.
Okay, what we're seeing there is the neighbours working outside. He's busy doing building work, and the tractors are now just coming past his house. This poison is all blown into our garden, and you're seeing clouds of poison blowing into his garden that they're all forced to run inside.
The poison used that day was Acrobat, a known carcinogen and endocrine disruptor.
Notice no protection. Look at that guy. They're spraying Folpan there, which gives you cancer.
We're not sure, however, how Johan Flock's biggest client, Tesco's, a huge UK-based chain store, would feel about this. They pride themselves on the fact that they never purchase items produced under unethical circumstances.
And there he goes. No mask, no goggles, no breathing apparatus.
Dink jy ek as persoon gaan myself aan chemiese middels wat verkeerd is tentoonstel? Dink jy ek gaan my arbeiders by goed wat verkeerd is? Nee.
I've had so many farmers tell me, oh no, you can dip your hand in the pesticide and mix it like that, and maybe they did when they grew up. The problem is that for some pesticides you'll have an acute exposure leading to an acute effect and you'll know the difference. For some pesticides you don't have that acute effect. It accumulates over time, it gives rise to health problems which have many other causes, so you don't link it, the fact that you develop lung cancer, to the fact that you worked with a pesticide.
All that stands between you and the deadly pesticide is an outdated act that offers little protection to South Africans and the environment.
The current legislation does not take into account issues of risk assessment, and therefore we are developing a policy which actually looks at all of those issues.
But while government offers reassurance, Groblersdal farm manager Kobus de Kock says it's consumers who dictate the terms.
Why use pesticides?
This is a perfectly clean exportable fruit. It's got absolutely no blemishes. This will fly off the shelf. A fruit looking like this is completely blemished. Nobody's going to buy it.
Using pesticides is purely for cosmetic reasons.
Well, I would say about 90% of it, yes.
The purpose of the use of pesticides is definitely not for aesthetics, from the point of view of the Department of Agriculture.
So, are South Africans paying the price for pristine fruit sold overseas? Back in Riebeek Kasteel, Johan Flock, together with a group of farmers, undertook to aerial spray their crops.
He flew right over the centre of our house, about 1.5 meters above our roof, with all of his sprayers on.
It was early one morning, a few days after Christmas, when Lisa Krombrock, with a house full of guests, had a rude awakening.
I was covered by the stuff and I immediately ran inside and tried to wash off what I could. I didn't know what it was that I was washing off.
Flock claims he had no alternative but to spray for fruit flies and that the spraying was well managed and did not affect the town.
Ons het 'n beheer uitgeoefen en ons het gesê die blokke teen die dorp gaan ons nie spat nie en ons het hulle nie gespat nie.
It carried on for about 2 or 3 hours that he went not over our house but right over the town.
We had the pilot here. The pilot actually admitted that it could have been possible that in some of the flyovers that he could have had leaking nozzles.
The town's chemical supplier, Eric Venter, claims that the poison used was not harmful.
I fully admit that more could have been done to actually tell people what's going on.
Jürgen Schermacher and Dr. Menar want more admissions like this. The two men, thousands of kilometers apart, are both on a crusade to make government more aware of what's really going on in their backyards.
We need to find a solution that suits primarily the residents of Groblersdal, but also to ensure that the farmers are able to do their work.
For Dr. Menar, it was a day of reckoning when all the stakeholders from national government, farmers and the agrochemical industry gathered in Groblersdal. Dr. Menar and Jürgen have drawn the battle lines in their respective communities and they're not backing down.
We don't have any problem with the vineyards, and we want the farmers to carry on selling grapes and doing well and bringing foreign exchange into the town, but they must do it in such a way that they don't poison their neighbours.
I see it as my responsibility as a medical doctor. I have to help these people. I have to help the community, including the farmers themselves that is also getting sick.
Sure, there has to be a middle way, huh? After the break, Vuyani and Galwana shook up the whole of the insurance industry and then resigned. What happened there?